Okay, so back to the book, Quench Your Thirst. Again, it's the new book by Jim Cook. And I have to say, I'm glad I read this one. And I'd like to share with you today two insights that I gleaned from reading this book. Cook starts with some simple advice, which seems obvious on the surface, but really isn't. It's a message that I wish I had internalized early in my career because I believe it's critically important for the success of an entrepreneur or really any professional. Cook indirectly suggests that we should follow the mantra he heard from his dad throughout his childhood. Every problem has a solution. I'll repeat it again. Every problem has a solution. Now, it's interesting when I compare that message to the one I received from my father. If you're a regular listener of the podcast, you know that I've learned some really great lessons from my father, and he was a huge and very positive influence on me. But in this one area, the indirect message that I received was not so helpful. My dad was an engineer, and his job was to point out potential problems. Unfortunately, that's how he handled many of our conversations. When I was young, I was full of ideas for businesses. I'd eagerly run to him to share my latest concept, and he'd proceed to point out all the potential problems. And that's when I'd get stuck and deflated. I never had enough knowledge to overcome the issues he raised. And unfortunately, I didn't recognize that I didn't have to have all the answers. I think about the issues, but often I didn't have a response. And I certainly never thought to reach out to experts to help me to solve the potential problems. Maybe I would if I were growing up today with the ease of having the internet, but I never did then, and I never moved forward with my ideas, and I felt frustrated. What I wish I had understood more clearly, much more clearly, is that recognizing problems is only a first step. Every worthwhile project will have roadblocks and challenges. And what matters is how you move forward after identifying the issues. The key to success, as Jim's dad preached, is to believe that every problem has a solution. You just need to put in the time and the money, find the resources needed, and perhaps most importantly, not let the problem diminish your excitement for the idea. That's why I really admire people who are working on big problems. I admire people who have the ability to wait years and sometimes a lifetime to see progress or any impact that they've had on a problem. Now, as an adult, when I'm faced with an issue, I often repeat to myself, this is just a problem that needs to be solved. If I keep thinking about the problem and working on it, I will eventually see a solution and I'll move forward. So just keep going. Knowing and really believing that obstacles are just temporary keeps me from getting frustrated and stuck. I wish as a child I'd heard and internalized the message that all problems have a solution. I'm really curious too. What kind of message did you receive growing up? If you got a message on this topic, please post it in the comments or go on over to Facebook or even Twitter. Another bit of wisdom that really resonated with me from the book was Cook's focus on the importance of listening. At one point in the book, he writes, quote, "People think a $200,000 market research report is good quality data, better in any case than sharing a beer with a few customers. I take a beer with my customers any day," unquote. He then goes on to explain how he made the decision to move into draft beer based on a conversation with a bartender, and how he changed the messaging about the product from listening to someone who was a diehard Heineken drinker, someone who should have been a customer but wasn't. I couldn't agree more. To expand any business, you need to listen to your customers, and you also need to listen to people who are not your customers but should be. These are the people who will tell you what resonates with them and what doesn't. Particularly from the second group, I think you can gain significant insights about your business from a single conversation. That is, if you're listening carefully and with an open mind. In the book, Jim explains that prior to one conversation, the hang tag message for Sam Adams read, quote, "America's only classic lager." A Heineken drinker Jim was talking to thought that all American beer was mass-produced and therefore inferior. But then Jim explained that beer that his beer was made in small batches by people who really cared about the quality of ingredients and taste. And it was only with that particular message that he was able to persuade that man to give it a try. And that's when he understood he needed to change the brand messaging to the beer is handcrafted in small batches so that people were willing to try the beer and accept it could be a better beer than the imports and be willing to pay more money for it. In my own business, I've created programs, many programs, directly as a result of customer conversations. I always listen really carefully to the questions that I receive, particularly the private questions that I receive after a keynote or after a workshop, because this is where I learn what I missed and what might be of interest to others. And similarly, questions that I've received from listeners and responded to have become some of the most popular episodes of The Public Speaker. And again, listening is critical for gaining the perspective of others. And in business and communication, to be successful, it's always important to gain the perspective of others. One of the perks of this job is that I often receive books for review, and I like to occasionally read one that I wouldn't normally pick out for myself. I think it helps me to practice my listening skills and also helps me to gain new perspectives, which in turn helps me to solve problems more creatively. And for me, this book, Quench Your Own Thirst by Jim Koch, was one of those books. And if you're interested in starting your own business or learning more about the craft beer industry, or you just want to gain insights from a highly successful professional, this is a book you'll want to read.